Okay, guys, so here's the story. We're going to have to take a delay on the 080 test. We're going to have to start with some trig. Start our trig. This is so weird, so don't be laughing at me as you're sitting in your homes listening to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record my voices, or record the whole screen here as I do this. So you can kind of watch the video, take notes as you watch it, and or you'll always have this resource to go back to. So it's kind of like your notes for the next couple of units, or for the next couple of whatever, however long we're here. So we're starting trig. Congratulations, you made it to trig, guys. All right, so basics of trig. First of all, always going to draw pictures. Always going to draw pictures. So this is kind of your standard position. Starting here is one side. As we know, an angle, let's just think of an angle for a minute, has a vertex, and it has a ray for one side and a ray for the other side. So when we do trig, one of the rays is always going to be right here like the x-axis. And if it's a positive angle, we're going to rotate up and around. And if it's a negative angle, we're going to rotate down and around. So before we've only done positive angles, we're now going to be big boys and girls and learn negative angles. So if I say an angle of 130 degrees, I'm always going to start right here. So that's one side of my angle. That's a positive angle, so I'm going to rotate up. And I know I'm going to end here because if I keep going, I'm all the way to 180 would be here. We don't want to go 180. We only want to go 130. So that angle would be right there, and that would be considered in the second quadrant. We have first quadrant, second quadrant, third quadrant, and fourth quadrant. It goes backwards. I think we've talked about that before. So that's a positive angle, up and around. So if I say an angle of 300 degrees, think about what quadrant that's going to end up in. What quadrant do you think? What quadrant do you think? Think. If you said third quadrant, you're wrong. Oh, look at all my birthdays coming up here. You can see that, I know. It's not the third quadrant. It's not the second quadrant. I'm going to start here, and I'm going to rotate up and go around. So I'm going to rotate this way. I'm at 90. I'm at 180. I'm at 270. If I get all the way around, I'm at 360. I don't want to be that far around. I just want to be there. So there's my angle. That angle is 300 degrees, and it terminates, it stops in the fourth quadrant. Notice my language, terminates. Terminate means stop. So if I said, give me another, well, we got to do some negative angles here first. Okay, so if I'm going to get the exact same angle with a negative angle. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to say, what's that angle? Well, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to rotate down. What would be equivalent to 300 degrees? Well, if I went 300 this way, I've got 30 left over to go for the 360, so this angle is going to be negative 30 degrees. Again, a negative angle starts here, rotates around to the bottom. These two angles are considered coterminal angles. 300 and negative 30 are coterminal angles because they terminate, the root word, they terminate in the fourth quadrant, and they are exactly the same angle. Whether you go 300 degrees or whether you go negative, oh, I just screwed that up. It's not 30, it's 60, isn't it? Maybe you were paying attention. Sorry, negative 60, because that adds to 360. So again, I'm going to say it. 300 degrees is coterminal with negative 60 degrees. They're both the exact same angle. Could I give another angle that is also coterminal with this? Well, what if I'm here and I go, so I'm 300. What if I go around another 360? So 300 plus 360, I'm at, oh my gosh, I can't add, 660 degrees. That would also be coterminal with these. I could just keep doing this all day long. Another 360, another 360, I could keep adding. Or on the flip side, I could also keep subtracting. 360. So here I am. If I subtract another 60, so negative 60 minus 360, that's going to be negative 420. Also, coterminal with all of these angles. They're all coterminal. They're all exactly the same angle. So let's think about, let's make it nice and easy so I don't have to screw up on my math. 100 degrees. Think about what quadrant it's going to be in. I'm going to start here. It's a positive angle, so I'm going to rotate up and around. I'm at 90. I need to go a little bit more. There's 100 degrees. So what is coterminal with 100 degrees? Negative angle now. So I'm thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to start here, and I'm going to rotate down and around. Well, this is negative 180 to there, and I got to figure out how much more to get there. Well, you can see these two angles here are supplementary. That little angle is 80, because 180 gives me 180. So here I'm going to go negative 180 and another 80. So what is that? Negative 260 is coterminal with this. Or, again, you could have just thought, well, if I subtract 360 from this, that's what I get. If you're trying to find a coterminal angle, the trick is either add 360 or subtract 360. So you can just keep adding 360. So for example, if I gave you this originally and said, what's a coterminal angle? You could say, oh, I'm going to add 360 to this, I get 100. If I keep adding 360, I get 460. And so on and so on and so on. Or I could start at 100 and say, okay, let's start at 100 and subtract 360. And keep subtracting 360, and that'll give you some coterminal angles. We really only care about angle degrees between 0 and 360, because 0 and 360 gives us our 4 quadrants here, which is what we want with trig. We're always going to be drawing pictures. We're always going to be in the 4 quadrants. Okay? So all of these angles that I'm drawing are considered to be in standard position, which is what we're going to be dealing with all the time. Standard position, because we love to graph and look at things on the x and y axis. So this angle that we just drew of 100 degrees is in standard position. I would say, what quadrant is this angle in? It stops, it terminates, it ends in the second quadrant, so it's a second quadrant angle. Now, what about a 90-degree angle? Where would that be? It's right here. It ends on the axis. What quadrant is that? You think it's 1? You think it's 2? Well, you would be wrong. It is not it's not in a quadrant. In fact, a 90-degree angle, a 180, a 270, a 360, a 450, keep adding, 90, 90, 90, 90. Those are called quadrantal angles. Quadrantal angles, which is weird because it's the word quadrant in there, but it's not on a quadrant. So 180 is a quadrantal angle. Negative 270 degrees is a quadrantal angle, which, by the way, let's think about negative 270. I would start here, negative 90, negative 180, negative 270. Each of these chunks are 90 degrees, as we know from geometry. 360 is a quadrantal angle. 450 if I go 360 and add 90. So anytime you land right on a part of the x-axis or a part of the y-axis, it's called a quadrantal angle. Okay, now I'm going to get into some of the trig. We know trig. We know sine. We know cosine. We know tangent. We know good old SOHCAHTOA with right triangle trig. Remember SOHCAHTOA? Well, we're going to add to these 3 now. We have 3 more trig functions. They are reciprocals of these 3 guys here. So the reciprocal of sine is cosecant, and it's abbreviated like this. And my little thing here, this is theta. That's an angle. The reciprocal of cosine is secant, which is SEC. And the reciprocal of tangent's the easy one to remember. It's called cotangent. And it's abbreviated COT theta. So I'll tell you right now, if you know these three, which you guys already do, it's going to be very easy to get the reciprocal functions. Okay, so let's look at an example of one we've known before. We're going to find all 6 trig functions. If I tell you this is our triangle, I'm going to be in the first quadrant, so that's nice because that's going to add another element. And let's make it our favorite, a 3, 4, 5 triangle. Theta is right here. Theta is actually called the reference angle. We'll get into that a little bit more later. So I'm going to make this, I'm going to leave theta as theta. So we're going to find all 6 trig functions. So every time I'm going to write sine, cosine, tangent. These are our favorites. And now I'm going to write the reciprocal functions right next to it so that I keep them straight. Okay, so sine. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. If we go back to our SOHCAHTOA, sine is opposite over hypotenuse. So I'm using theta as my angle. Opposite side is 4, hypotenuse is 5. So the cosecant, all I do is I flip that. I take the reciprocal. Boom. Cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse. So adjacent over hypotenuse. Secant, flip it. Tangent is, of course, opposite over adjacent. So it's opposite over adjacent. Flip it. So I told you, if you know these 6, you're good to go for the other 3 because you just take the reciprocal. You just flip them. Okay? Okay, that's all we're going to do for today. We're going to do tons more of this next time. So now what I want you to do is you're going to go to Schoology, go into the first folder. I've got the instructions on Schoology, and you're going to do the 1.1 trig coterminal angles and make sure you submit that to Schoology. I hope you are all safe and taking care of yourself.